Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another massive edition of CrowCast Tuesday Night Live. Joining me this evening is Donkey and Pete. How you going, gentlemen?
Very well, Fian, yourself. And Don, how you going?
Yes, no. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm going quite well, thank you.
Good to have you both along.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, did we light a fire last week? I'm not sure, Pete. What do you reckon?
You don't want to overrate yourself, do you? But it's been a funny old week after that. It's been a funny old week indeed.
Funny old week, and it seems to have just come to a head this evening, and of course we'll get to all that in a moment. Unfortunately, Macca can't be with us tonight. Sorry, Don.
No, I was going to say it's the pressure point of the weekly Tuesday Night Live podcast has all sort of flushed it out again.
Well, you know, we are the hub of all Crow's information, apparently. Yeah, as I mentioned, Macca can't join us tonight. He's got prior engagement, so it's just the three of us. So we'll whiz straight into some Crow's news, shall we? And the best in the business, the newsbreaker of CrowCast, Peter J. How are you, mate?
You're funny.
Go for it.
I'm really well. You know, I'm going to, and obviously there's nowhere else we can go in terms of news but this story. I'd kind of say at the outset that the people that do this podcast are absolute passionate Crows-loving fans, and that's why we do it, because we don't actually get paid. We don't even look like remotely getting paid, and we do it because we love it and we love the footy club. And when occasions arise, like last weekend, when I got that information shot my way, we don't go out. I certainly, I've got a full-time professional job as well as wife and three kids. I certainly do not have the time or the energy or the inclination to go out and chase this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It falls, and I think that given the information that we did get, I thought that it was it's reasonable that we run with it. But nobody's here to smash the football club and all that. We just, all we want is to actually look at something that's happening and say, well, this is affecting the on-field results. So I think it's something we need to talk about. And I'm certainly not in the business of rumour mongering and all of that kind of stuff, because one thing you do, I find that you do get is that if you do pop your head up above the parapet and with a bit of information, there's a hell of a lot of people there that want to shoot your head off. As being a scumbag rumour merchant, rabble rouser, all that kind of stuff, and that's just not the way we roll at all. And Fian, I think you know me well enough over the years by now that if I get some information, then there's no way in the world I'm putting it out over this little platform or anywhere if I'm not pretty sure that it's that it's on the money.
Yeah.
And the couple of and I don't have a whole lot of sources out there, player managers and all that kind of stuff feeding information. So I have pretty much only there's only one source of information, or one avenue from where I get some info, and it comes unsolicited, and it could be about anything. And you'd know that over the years it has always been 110% on the money when it does come.
Never missed.
It just never misses. And so it was with some a bit of a heavy heart, I suppose, that can reveal that the information that we had last week about the fact that contracted players were unhappy and would be seeking a trade at season's end. I certainly I got the clearance today given the fact that it broke all over everywhere else, I got the clearance to to share that it was indeed Mitch McGovern, that the name was the name that we were given last week as being a player who was particularly upset at the collective minds thing. Now, obviously, the story that broke tonight from Sam McClure referred to issues in terms of payments and how much he was getting and all of that kind of stuff.
That doesn't really ring in with what we've.
Well, it doesn't,
received.
and I think it's quite clear. What we got was that it was all down to collective minds. So I don't know. I'm not going to say that my information is better than his, but that's just what we got. So I'm not going to say anything more than that. But the bottom line is that the news broke tonight that let's put aside the reasons for a moment. His management has come out and denied it, of course, as you would expect them to do, because it's a bit of a disaster for that to be breaking. But I think also we need to go one step back, Donkey and Fian, and it was interesting that after the game on Sunday, Stephen Rowe, in his emotional state, started to drift back to collective minds. We had Ricci at the press conference after the game starting to prod Don Pike about collective minds. And it culminated tonight. Geez, I thought we had enough information tonight just even without the McGovern stuff breaking. But the fact that Stephen Rowe, and I thank PJ was listening in on 5AA. I wasn't listening, but both Rowe and Bickley have come up. They've gone back to collective minds again, and they've said that it is the cause of a major drama down at the club. That the playing group, and this now is coming from Bickley, saying that the playing group is fractured, and that the players are playing for themselves. Now, and in the end, Rowe said that it's now a matter. It's now up to the club to come out and actually come clean with what happened with collective minds, and but that he fully expects if they don't, that there's going to be a breaking of ranks anyway. And joining the dots on that one, I think if you go back to Caroline Wilson's article earlier in the year, her source of information was obviously a WAG, and so I suspect that that's probably where the leak is going to come from. So we had I know, Fian, we messaged before the show, and we were quite excited that mainstream media seemed to have picked that up, and that was even before the bombshell that came just about an hour ago about McGovern. But anyway, that's me wrapping everything up, I suppose, as to how we saw that happen. Now, we're not. I don't think either of us have got silly enough egos to think that people were listening in on us and running with it just because we said it. But there has been, Rose mentioned it before, this is
Ricci went with it on Monday too.
Ricci went with it. Caroline Wilson went with it extensively earlier in the year. So did McClure. This is a story that is not going to go away. And it's going to be interesting now to see how the football club run with it.
Yeah, I found it interesting. Mitch's player-manager made reference to a group of players who were looking to leave Adelaide, and went on to say, he didn't want to lump Mitch in with that group of players. Now, to me, that's a story within itself, because obviously within the industry, there is enough word going around that he feels comfortable in saying, there's everyone over the last 2 weeks has been hearing about a group of players that want out of Adelaide. Well, that's not just something that you say, is it? We certainly were given the okay to mention Mitch this evening in light of McClure's release on SEN earlier. It's not the only name we've received, is it, Pete? Not the only name of unhappiness that we've received.
No, and I'm not going to, I don't want to sound like a tool, but I was only allowed to. I think I said last week. I said contracted players plural, and I actually read the message out. and it certainly was plural. And so that we know of at least one other player who is particularly unhappy. Although I think that and I'm not even going to say that actually. So I'm not going to say what it relates to, because it'll probably give it away. But from the same source who has given us McGovern, there is another, key contracted player who is particularly unhappy at goings on down there. So anyway, it's if something breaks about that, then I'll release that name as well. But I got no clearance on that name.
Yeah, well, I mean, a few little bits and pieces sort of get thrown around, and as you rightly said, Pete, we don't chuck anything out there unless we're pretty sure that it's cast iron. You wonder where the leak's coming from to the media, because the information is different enough that would suggest that it's from different sources. As you mentioned it earlier, the suspicion is it might be a wife or girlfriend, and it certainly ties in with the information we have around the conditions of the camp, which were that the players weren't allowed contact with the outside world for a period of time, and also the nature of that camp, which is some might call it a little bit chauvinistic or misogynistic or what have you. But the reports that I read when I was doing my research last week certainly indicated it is known to cause ructions within relationships as well. So, I mean, God. The only thing that I'll add to the whole thing is that the club were kind enough to contact me last Friday. We did approach them after the cast for comment. The club essentially don't want to throw any more fuel on the fire. They don't feel that it serves any purpose to continue the conversation, and that it's time for everyone to move on from it. And it was a fairly candid conversation that I have much that I can't really reveal, but not that there's anything in there that would add to what we've already said anyway. But I would like to thank the club for at least taking the time to give us a call, and address some of the questions that we had raised from last week. I don't know where we go from here on this one, Pete. I guess we just sort of sit back and wait and see now what happens. The onus is really on the club now, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing, which we'll get into later in the show, is just how putrid of a performance that was on Sunday.
Yeah.
I honestly think, and I don't want to get hysterical here, but that for me, if you consider the cattle that was on the park for the opposition, that was one of the worst performances I've seen. And I've been a member since inception. That is one of, if not the worst performance that'll ever be catalogued. If you look at the players that we still had available, and you look at who Fremantle had on the park, it was an inexcusable performance, and it was a performance to me laden with, actions, I suppose, that are related to internal unrest. That's the only way that you can put it. So I'm not trying to, no one's trying to stir the pot here, but all you can do is look at what you see out in the park, and you've got to. Sorry not to get too much into it because I know we want to talk about it later, but you've got Sarah, who he was admittedly a high draft pick, but he's played 11 games of football. He's got 30 possessions.
Well,
and just running amok, and then you had Brennan Cox. He's played 14 games of football. Yeah. He's kicked 4 goals in 14 games.
Yeah,
he hasn't even looked like it. He had 19 possessions, 7 marks, and 4 goals.
Let's not forget, Pete, and let's not stray too much off the news just yet, but let's not forget that No, it's fine because it's topical. We started the season kind of battling manfully against a wave of injuries, which is another conversation altogether that we might have in a minute. But we had the Melbourne loss, and then we had the GWS loss, in which I felt that we tried, and we were outplayed in the end, or certainly outmuscled. And then we had essentially a capitulation to a bottom three team. Let's be honest. And without drawing correlation and all that, the reports are fairly strong that Collective Minds paid a visit to the club the week before the Melbourne game, and it seems that it wasn't you only got to look at results, don't you? Look, the thing of it is, Collective Minds on the Twitter feed and all the rest of it are quite happy to take responsibility for our successes, and I think that's a fairly long draw to bow. But if Collective Minds are going to do that for their, pumping up their own tyres, then they've also got to take responsibility for what's going on this year, and we haven't had a peep out of them. So anyway, we'll leave that one now.
And DSG on the chat's just saying that's a rumour about Eddie Betts now. So anyway, we'll leave that one there. But did you want to move on to some other news? That's probably, that's obviously the biggest thing that's going around at the moment. It's very, you can't ignore that. It'll be interesting to see what happens now with McGovern. But anything else?
I think, Pete, the only thing that I'd like to add to this general debate or this general discussion, and then we might just look at some specific news items that have popped up. This Collective Minds issue has probably detracted away from what has hamstrung our season, pun intended more than anything else, and that's our injury count. And whilst we've suffered a few injuries of late that are unforeseen, like impact injuries or rolled ankles or what have you, there's a general malaise amongst the club, amongst the squad. They don't look like they're right. They don't look like they're fit. Carrying injuries and all the rest of it. And we've mentioned once or twice the use of Kangatech in terms of being a culprit. Now, I put my research hat on again over the last couple of days, and Kangatech is a bona fide piece of technology. It was developed by Steve Saunders, who's now an Adelaide resident. He's no longer the performance manager at North Melbourne. He was quietly resigned and was replaced in September, October last year. Steve spent all his time now marketing and demonstrating and implementing Kangatech around the place. They were utilised during the NBA draft. A number of teams utilised them in their draft assessments. They've been picked up by at least one and have worked with half a dozen NBA teams this year with good results. They've been out to to a couple of English cricket sides. They've been out to Everton Soccer Club. They're utilised obviously by North Melbourne. They are owned by the general manager and I think the chief operating officer of North Melbourne, Carl Delina, and I forget the other guy's name. They're a bona fide piece of technology, and it is designed to monitor load on a player's body, and it does that with wearables and other sensors. It provides real-time data that is supposed to assist fitness staff, strength and conditioning staff, in their assessment of players' ability to train, players' ability to play, the extent of injuries. It's utilised in rehabilitation, and it's data-driven technology. It's not. When we talk about Kangatech, we're not even talking about them in the same breath as Collective Minds. Kangatech is bona fide leading edge technology. So you can only imagine that the problem with Kangatech, given that we've had so much problem with injury management, the problem has to sit with our fitness staff, because what happens is we purchase the software, we get a demonstration, we may get assistance with, implementation and fitting out our rooms and stuff with the sensors and whatnot. And then, the head of fitness or whoever gets trained, and then, away we go. And I'm sure Saunders is available for consultation, but essentially it's a tool that is utilised by Matt Haas and the other strength and conditioning staff down there, obviously overseen by Brett Burton. Now, when we talk about Kangatech and when we talk about injury management, which I think has actually had a bigger impact overall, and I think had we not been suffering all these soft tissue injuries early in the season and pushed too hard with pre-season and all the rest of it, then Collective Minds wouldn't be such a story, Pete. But I think it's the amalgamation of the two that has made this such a big deal. But make no mistake, Kangatech isn't snake oil. It's bona fide technology. So the onus for the train wreck that was our pre-season and our injury list at the moment rests solely at the feet of our strength and conditioning staff, obviously overseen quite heavily by Brett Burton.
Yeah. Look, I agree. It's obviously a combination of the two, because if it's one of them in isolation, then and we've got half a dozen A-grade players back there, then maybe the gaps don't look as wide. Hard to know, but
and they feed into each other.
They do. So no, I agree with you, mate. I've had a bit of a look at the Kangatech thing, and I agree. It's not the snake oil. No. It's not in the same category as Collective Minds, but yeah, there's obviously been mismanagement in terms of the injuries as well.
Well, and clearly when I think it was Don referred to a review of our injury management early season, about 4 or 5 weeks in, you can only assume that was in the manner in which that's been implemented. And I have heard from an unconfirmed source, so this is just hearsay, but I've heard that the confidence in that technology has diminished at the club, probably not because of the nature of the technology, but again, implementation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and there's also a point here. Sorry, that what point does Don Pike put his hand up and say that he's responsible for the performance on the field? So all of this stuff that's going on, he needs to sort of grab it and take some leadership of it. I know that they talk about captain's leadership, but he's also the head coach of the club, and it's actually his name on the line all the time. When are we going to see some of that strength by Don?
It's an interesting question, because at the moment it seems to be that the club is pointing fingers at the playing group.
Yeah, fingers in the growing room and defer. We've got this technology, we've got this collective minds thing, we've got this, we've got that. He's the head coach. He's the one that doesn't have them ready. He's the one that's not having them ready to play. And you can point the finger at the playing group so many times, but at the end of the day, he is the one that's supposed to have them ready to play. Didn't have them ready on grand final day, and they disappear, with seeming regularity at the moment. And it's at some point the buck's got to stop with him.
But is that, and I accept what you're saying, is that a reasonable proposition though, given the hierarchical nature of the club, and it would be interesting to know, and this venue might, or someone on the chat might, just the extent to which he has power over some of these appointments, and the extent to which he has power over the management of injuries, for example.
A lot of people have been complaining about Don's use of the word continuity, and his continual use of the word continuity in presses. And I don't know about you guys, but I detected a fair amount of frustration in Don's press conference last week. And, he treads a fine line between PR and, straight answers. And I wonder whether he's actually having a dig back at the club with regards to the fact that there aren't many players that have had continuity. and that the performances, his references to continuity are more about the fact that he can't get a team on the park.
Yeah, look, and I realise that I might be, shooting a bit high here, and it might not be fair to put it all on Don, as a lot of people have said, especially on the live chat. But at the end of the day, the Bucks got to stop somewhere. And, I know that if I was in Don's position, and even if there were people around me that were paid to do jobs, I would be wanting to make sure that those jobs are being executed properly. Because at the end of the day, it's his win-loss record that gets put up there for all the world to see. Nobody talks about Brett Burton's 3 years as the football head manager. They'll talk about his head coaching record, and he needs to have a good hard look at himself.
Well, look, and maybe things are happening behind the scenes in that regard, Donkey, that we don't know about. Maybe Don has precipitated a bit of a change in the way that we manage injuries. It seemed like someone certainly pulled rank with regards to Tex playing last week. Now, whether that was Don or whether that was Tex, who knows? It seemed like a knee-jerk reaction, but it also seemed like someone saying, well, you're the captain, get on the park, and stuff this mid-season mini pre-season, because it's not going to be of any value if we don't win the next couple of games. I don't know. Don Pike doesn't strike me as the sort of person that suffers fools greatly, and this collective mess that we're in at the moment, I don't think it is of his making. Certainly not wholly and solely, and I reckon he'd be pushing back at certain people within the club pretty hard at the moment.
Yeah.
Let's go to some other stuff, Donk. Because we'll probably drift back into this when we get to talking about the match. Obviously, there was the other disappointing news from the weekend that Eddie Betts had been trolled on social media with a racist comment, which is always disappointing. The club put out a statement. I'm just reading a little bit of it here. The discriminatory comment was made on an Instagram post by a Perth-based AFL fan following the club's loss to Fremantle. Adelaide's newly appointed Indigenous Liaison Officer, Jeremy Johncock, said it was extremely disappointing and frustrating that this kind of behaviour still exists in our game and the broader community. Eddie moved on from it pretty quickly, but we know that Eddie's a bit sensitive to these sorts of things. And why does this stuff continually happen?
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's just disgraceful, of course. And the sad thing about it was he'd made the effort to stop and have photographs taken with some Fremantle fans. And then it becomes a Fremantle fan who makes that, allegedly, who makes that comment. So, we just, we can't denounce it enough. And it's just, all we can do as a community is just stamp out every chance we can and call it out. And I'm glad that he did.
And it's such a shame. He seems to be the target. It's the third or fourth issue that he's had along these lines. Since he's been back in Adelaide, it's such a pity. Yeah.
I mean, you could look at sort of broader issues of any player in the AFL that's sort of stands up and seems to be proud. If you're Indigenous, sort of seems to copy a bit of this, and it's pretty sad that it keeps happening. And it's a lot of people hiding behind false identities and aliases and things like that online that seem to be doing most of the damage.
Yeah.
As a side note, great to hear Jeremy Johncock's name. I remember Jeremy. I reckon he played originally. He was out in the Brosselite and Gawler League. Played a lot of football for Williston out there, I reckon.
Yeah, right.
Back in the day when I used to actually write for a local rag out there, and I used to be on the board out there a millennium ago. And I reckon I'm pretty sure it was Williston he played for. And I think he then came down and played a bit of football, bit of Resi's football down maybe for Sturt, I think.
Yeah.
Terrific lad, and great to...
your mic's gone a bit funny there, Pete. Did you half unplug it?
Yep. No, all good now. Never made it, obviously, in the big time, but good to see that he's made his way and he's found himself a niche.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the club's obviously done its injury update today as well. stating Lairdy and Lynchy both have fitness tests ahead of Saturday night. Rashido this morning referred to Lynch as ribs before he was corrected by text. So that's what a few of us have suspected it might have been ribs rather than the side strain, but we'll wait and see on that one. Lairdy obviously with a hairline fracture, so that'll be interesting to see if he comes up. Who else have we got here? Lukey Brown's going to have scans on his injured ankle. Surprising that he hasn't had scans yet. Is unlikely to play. When they go over on someone else's foot, that never ends well, does it, Pete?
No, it doesn't. You're referring to mine?
Oh, was it? Yeah, well, that's right. That's Luke Brown landed on his opponent's foot as well. That's how he rolled it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't end well. It's actually a classic basketball or netball injury, that one.
Yeah.
Dirty players are taught to do that in basketball when they go up for the three-point jump shot. You put your feet under theirs and take out the lead shooter.
Yeah.
I've heard, never done it myself.
Never done it yourself, yeah. Harry Deer has got some knee soreness requiring further assessment. I don't think that matters for poor old Harry because he's never going to get a game anyway, according to our selection committee. Positive news. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's very strange considering how good his AFLX form was.
Well, if ever you wanted a bloody form line for the future, the AFLX is it, isn't it, Doc?
Yeah, that can't get any better.
Positive news, Sloaney's on track to return after the bye, probably after the season is all over. Riley Knight continues to be listed as 1 to 2 weeks. I reckon that's about 4 weeks in a row now. Knight has been 1 to 2 weeks with hamstring tendonitis. Govers at 6, so I reckon that's been pushed back a week. Hunter is 7 with his ankle, and then we've got Smith and Crouch listed as
6. He was 8. He was 8 weeks at the showdown.
Yeah, that's right. I reckon it's been pushed out a week. It was 6 to 7 for 2 weeks after it being 8, and now it's 6. So I reckon it's been sneakily pushed out a week.
Yeah, and there's a bit of, and some of the reasons why the stats tonight, the news tonight about McGovern is so sad, and the stats about him not being back for another 6 weeks are sort of the death knell for us. Is I did a bit of counting, busted out the old abacus this afternoon and did a bit of counting on the big shooter McGovern, and the Crows since round 1 2017, the Crows are 16 wins, 5 losses and 1 draw, with McGovern being in the side. And in the same time, we're 9 wins and 6 losses without him. So there's a massive difference to how we play our football when Shooter McGovern's in the side.
Yeah, someone sent me a private message. Someone who okay with sent me a private message wanting to know about the name that we dropped last week, and I just apologised and said, no, sorry, I couldn't divulge it. I said, but, if you can think of one player on our list that you do not want to lose, then that was all I kind of said. But, yeah, to me, Mitch McGovern is just such an important player to our setup.
Yeah. Go on.
No, sorry. Other news, another Liz Frank injury. Is it just me, or are these cropping up far too regularly now? Daniel Wells is out with a Liz Frank now, and definitely high grade, requiring surgery. Do you reckon, Pete? Remember back in the day, the footy boots that we used to wear used to be actual Aussie rules football boots, and then they stopped making them and just imported soccer boots. Do you reckon there's anything in that, or is it harder grounds, or what? Because it's unbelievable how many foot injuries we're getting now.
I just reckon it's the extra kilometres. Don't you think? I reckon it's just the extra Ks.
And maybe better diagnostics.
They're just players were never running these kind of Ks.
It's true.
In years gone by, and I think it's just wear and tear.
Yeah, it's true. What else have we got? We got the other news, stupid news. God help me, because this podcast will shut down if this ever comes in. But AFL trialled on-field zones in a secret closed session using the Hawthorn Football Club on the weekend at Etihad. FMD, gentlemen. Heard about that one?
I didn't want to. I've just got my kid out of under 9s, which is zones, and we're finally out of zones, under 10s, and so I'm that excited by it. So is he. So I just don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
What a disgrace. Hey, like seriously, this can't make it through the commission, can it? Or does Gill just decide? How does this happen? Surely, can we walk away from the game? What happens? How do we kill it?
Well, it's getting. Of all the things that they've put forward to try and reduce the congestion on the ground, zones is the least desirable as far as I'm concerned. Once you start contriving the movement of players on the ground and controlling it to that degree, we've done it with the centre square, and we have goal square and all that sort of stuff, and that's only for very short periods of the game, like centre bounces or kick-ins. But to control the movement of players around the ground for the duration of the match, to me, is just the last thing you want to do.
Yeah. Next thing, we'll have an offside rule.
Just really quickly, I'll just sidetrack you for a sec.
Yeah.
Jason McKay, g'day, Jason is on chat tonight, and he's one of our regular listeners. He just quickly popped in. He hadn't heard the start of the show, and he was asking about Mitch McGovern. Quickly, Jason, for your benefit, we just mentioned at the start of the show that Sam McClure broke the story about Mitch McGovern leaving, but just to confirm, he was the name, if you remember from last week, we talked here about a contracted player. He was the name given to us. So we confirmed that at the start of the show, that he was the name given to us as one of the players who was leaving as a result of collective mind. So just clarifying that.
Yeah.
For Jason, as he missed the start of the show. Sorry.
Yeah. Come on, Jason. You know what time it is. We expect
he's a regular listener, regular contributor. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have bothered.
He gets special compensation. What is it? Dispensation. I don't know. Dispensation.
Come on, Fiend.
Oh, look, it's just been a big day again.
Trying to run a podcast.
Yeah, I know. Look, the other things that they tried was the last touch rule, which is successfully implemented in the SANFL. I don't mind that rule so much. And the thing that I'm probably most in favour of, if they were ever going to tweak it at all, is taking 2 blokes off the ground. 16 aside. I don't think that's very popular.
The reality is, for every action is a reaction, and the reality is that the whole game changed with the advent of 4 interchange players, because what that meant is that players could rotate on and off the bench, and suddenly the whole game changed. So we had zones moving up and down the ground because players, particularly midfielders, could just have a spell, so they could run ridiculous distances, and knowing that they were going to get a rest. And this is what's happened. And if you want to take the game back and rid it of all of this congestion, then just get the interchange, just lose the interchange bench and make it go back to 2 reserves. This is what caused it. Yep. This is the cause of all of the zone, all of the flooding. All of that has been done because of the greater running capacity of the players.
Yeah.
And if they can't, if you take out those rotations and they can't have that rest and they can't run those distances, otherwise, it causes injury or whatever, then they won't be able to do it, and players will have to hold position.
Well, the other side
Sorry.
I was going to say the other side of the coin, Pete, is that coaches are forcing blokes to continue to play as if, rotations are still up at 120. They're pushing the boundaries in terms of fitness, and it makes you wonder whether that is contributing to soft tissue injuries and foot injuries and whatnot. And I've always been a big advocate of increasing the size of squads, because I think that the one thing that AFL clubs haven't caught on to is the management of a squad as a whole. You look at the EPL, for example. There's games that they will play, 4, 5 or 6 second stringers, and they will manage their squad throughout a season, whereas AFL teams are prone to wanting to put their best 22 on the park each week. And I think if they're afforded a bigger squad and allowed some more flexibility in terms of how they manage that squad and how they played that squad, I think that would probably alleviate some of the injury problems, and particularly, as you said, if you reduce the interchange back down to 2 where it should be, it would offset, fatigue issues and fatigue injuries and that sort of stuff. There's always a bloody silence after I've said something. Hello?
Sorry, I think sometimes I'm not sure if you've still got more to say. Sorry.
No, I've had a gutful.
Do you want to get onto the game?
Yeah, let's get onto the bloody game. I don't think... Walter's got a week for... Well, he got a week for punching Kelly. He got off the headbutt, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Something like that. Anyway, let's talk about that. Wasn't great, was it? 1 quarter of footy, really.
This was as putrid a game as I can ever remember, and yes, we've got some injuries and the like, but the team that we sent over, there's absolutely no excuse for that performance on Sunday. No excuse coming up against an opposition with its 2 key players out. Fife, currently arguably the best player in the competition. In his current form, and they played a bunch of kids with a couple of old blokes thrown in like Ballantyne, who should be past it, and we just got absolutely smoked by a bunch of kids who were prepared to outwork us, and run and tackle and chase and harass and just do all of those things that people can do, just effort things. And I guarantee you that Brennan Cox won't kick 4 goals in a game of football again for the rest of the year. He certainly won't have 19 possessions and take 7 marks. What has happened? The question I would put is, what has happened to our defensive structure? Because the amount of cheap, easy goals, and I don't know, maybe it's to do with the player fracture stuff that we've talked about, and players not playing for each other, blah, blah, blah. But in the last 3 weeks against Melbourne, GWS and Fremantle, the ridiculously easy goals that we have given up have just been shocking. Shocking.
Well, the first goal of the match we gave up over the back, and we got caught out the back 3 or 4 times during the match, and that's not something that an Adelaide team would ever do. And to me, it was evident that there was just no defensive running. There was just no two-way running. We're getting killed off the spread, Pete, and when we turn the ball over, which we're prone to do because our delivery into forward 50 at the moment is deplorable, when it bounces back off our half-forward line and goes the other way, our mids either can't or won't run. And it exposes our defence one-on-one, and, blokes have... People have a go at Hardigan and Kelly, although I acknowledge Kelly's not in great form, but, people have a go at our defence. You can't do a hell of a lot when there's a tidal wave of the opponents streaming forward, and able to, isolate them one-on-one. There's not a lot a defender can do.
Yeah, but a lot of it, yes, some of it is a result of downfield stuff, but, and it may not necessarily be, and I'm probably looking more at the coaching staff, but there's got to be something in our defensive structure that is we're just not, we're pushing too high up the ground and just leaving all this space out the back that nobody is then going and doubling back on and chasing, and consequently we're just getting. It wasn't just Sunday; it's been the last 3 weeks. We've just been absolutely burned out the back.
Well, PJ Crow's on
ridiculously easy goals.
PJ Crow's on the chat has raised exactly what I was going to say in response to that. We're still playing very high defensively. We're still playing very high, and in the past we've been able to do so because our mids have had some defensive action. But at the moment, you look at where the goals come from. It's either a one-out marking contest or it's a midfielder kicking goals against us. Look at in that Melbourne game, how much that young lad kicked against us. The other thing too, Pete, the stat that stood out for me was, we brought back Tex. It was a statement of intent by our club. We're here to win the game. We've brought back our captain early. We're here to win. And then we run out there and we lay a paltry 54 tackles for the match in a game that we have to win. 54 tackles.
Yeah, that's it. It's just horrendous.
I feel like the players are trying when the ball's in their immediate area, but you and I both know that's only 50% of the story. And what you do when the ball's not in your zone, plays a big part in how effective you are. And I think that, we see blokes trying and putting their bodies on the line when the ball's there, but are they running defensively? Are they getting into the right positions? Are they following team patterns and team rules? I don't think they are, either because they can't from fitness or because they just can't be stuffed anymore. How did you see it, Donkey?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch all of it. I was out camping, but I was watching on my phone for different bits, and it just I watched the first quarter and then disappeared for the second when we apparently played really well. It just looked like it reminded me a lot of the Melbourne game. We were just slow to the ball, and just that intensity and effort and energy wasn't there. I just wonder about guys like, CY and Greenwood. They've been at the coalface now for 12 weeks, and, do they really have the tank and composure to be able to keep being there? Our defensive work from the mids has, stuck out to me really heavily in the last few weeks, and also, Sam Jacobs basically being a pot plant once the ruck contest is having. He's just not. He's not making his way around the ground. He's not. You used to be able to count him for a couple of good clunkers in the forward half, and probably a couple of saving ones in the back half throughout a game. You just aren't seeing that from him at the moment. And they used to call him the big mid, and he's gone a bit missing. I just think, just to sound a bit cliched, but I think we're missing some continuity. I think we need our best blokes out there, and they need to play a bit together, because at the moment we've got our B graders like CY out there doing the best they can, but they just don't have all the tools in the tank.
But are they though? I mean, we can look at the players.
Well, I think he's doing the best that he can.
There's fitness issues, and they're cooked, and all the rest of it. Well, they got outworked and outrun and outmuscled by an 18-year-old kid off the back of 11 games and one pre-season, and he ran them into the dirt. Got 30 possessions. He had 18. In 11 games, his career high of that 11 games was 18 possessions. He had one 18 possession game, and that was about it. And then he's back down to to low double figures. And all of a sudden, we get out there and he bobs up with 30 possessions. I mean, it's just that is just an indictment on the work rate and the level of interest we had in that game, that you can allow an 18 kid who's had 11 games to run around like an unregistered dog and get 30 disposals.
Well, it happened against Melbourne as well. Same sort of thing. A young
I don't mind. I mean,
crazy.
at least Melbourne were a half decent team. But the reality is that the only reason that the effort and the performance were actually on par, and the only reason it was the massive difference in the actual losing margin was because of just what a borderline waffle team was put out on the park.
Yeah.
If that had been against any other top 6 or 7 team this year, it would have been another 80 or 90 point result.
Yeah, but there's a couple of things I think that a lot of people are bagging Greenwood and Ellis Yeoman, and I do agree that one of their deficiencies is their defensive action. But if you have a look at the stats, we played Matt Crouch as an outside midfielder. Now, Matt's obviously got a shoulder issue, as well as having pingy hamstrings at the moment, but he only got 7 contested possessions for the match last week and didn't lay a tackle, right? That's Matt Crouch, last year's All-Australian centreman. Now, if they're going to play him on the outside, then he has to do the work. He has to run and chase, because it only takes 1 or 2 blokes in that midfield to not do the work, and Bryce Gibbs is another one. He can often be seen not running defensively as hard as he might. Richie Douglas at times can be guilty as that as well. And I think it's a bit harsh to lump it all on the two lads that we've used as bulldozers and battering rams all season, because A, their fitness base isn't at that level anyway, but B, it's not their freaking job. You know, we've got senior players on the outside, Gibbs, Douglas, Matt Crouch, that should be doing this, and they're not.
Oh, Atkins, McKay.
Well, I was going to get to Atkins. Jesus, wet.
I know you love him.
No.
Well, the other thing, before we tear Atkins apart, and we should. The other thing is our disposal efficiency must be 30% lower than it was this time last year, or something astronomical like that, because we do not seem to be able to hit a target like ever. It's very frustrating to watch. You know, the GWS game. You know, we probably would have won if they hadn't kicked the ball over Fogg's head 3 times or at his feet 2 other times, you know. And it's just something you just see continually. And it's not just the usual suspects like, you know, McKay and Gibson. It's, you know, it's a whole lot of people missing a whole lot of targets.
Well, Matt Crouch was diabolical by foot. And I think our overall disposal efficiency, I haven't got it in front of me, but from memory from Sunday night, I think it was around 68%. But I'd love to see what our kicking efficiency was, because I'd be stuffed if I reckon it was over 55%. Because you're dead set right, Donk, the amount of targets we missed going forward. You know, we miss targets consistently. And the thing, and this is something that Nicky and Macca and I spoke about on Sunday night. They weren't missed kicks, Donkey. They weren't bluffed kicks. They were kicks to the wrong spot. You know, we'd put it at someone's feet, or we'd put it behind them. We don't seem to be kicking to grass when we're going forward. We seem to be more content to put it on someone's head, which is schoolyard stuff. So whether it seems to me there's a big disconnect at the moment in our forward entry, because the ball just isn't going where the forwards need it to go.
So I've got an eye on the clock. Thanks. I don't have the pass I had last week.
No good.
I see
no dramas,
Dogs 105. Good to have you along, mate. And I know that he's looking very, very positive towards next week, saying that we'll stuff the Hawks. What are we thinking for changes, and what are we thinking for our chances against the Hawthorn at the MCG with Sean Burgoyne playing his 350th game?
Yeah. Well, it looks like at least 2 force changes, you would think. Luke Brown comes out. There's some question marks over JJ. There's some question marks over Talia. I noticed neither of those players were mentioned in dispatches, but reports were that Talia was on crutches after the game. Who else was there? Was someone else? Yeah, JJ spent a lot of time off the ground during the match. So, God, I don't know. I mean, at some point we're going to have to make players accountable, but do we have the cattle?
Well, we don't. That's the thing.
I mean, Atkins has to come out. He does not offer anything as an AFL footballer at the moment.
Well, why can't Curly Hampton get a game?
I don't know. A lot of people don't like him, but you and I rate him quite fine, and the coaching staff before he got injured last year rated him quite fine too, Pete. I don't know what he's got
a bit of potential. Well, just, you know, compared to some of the stuff that's been going on out there, I mean,
couldn't be any worse. Any worse. Paddy Wilson had another good game last weekend. Certainly worth a crack, even though, you know, we're lacking pace, and Pat certainly doesn't add to that. I think Gallucci needs to come in because he does offer pace, and I think Gallucci off Atkins' wing is certainly a win in terms of aggression at the contest and efficiency by foot. So, to me, Gallucci comes in for Atkins. It's almost a no-brainer. After that, you know, who comes in for Brown if Laird's not right? Maybe Cole Chaney. You know, Jake Kelly probably isn't there on form at the moment, but we've got no one else. You know,
the cupboard's looking a bit bare.
I think you're spot on, Dean, with what you got. There's not a lot. As Pete said, there's not a lot in the cupboard. So
they've been talking about Ben Davis. Does he come in, Donk?
No, I haven't. Was he an emergency last week? I feel like he was an emergency.
No, he wasn't. But he's been named 4th or 5th best in the last couple of weeks in a row. He's kicked 3 against Westies at the bye. They kicked, and he was in the best players there. And then he got 2 against the Eagles. He was 4th or 5th best. I think there's a hell of a lot there to be excited about with Ben Davis. I think that he's one of the real standout positives of the season. I'm very, very excited about his development. Whether he's ready to go now is another question in terms of his fitness, because this is only he was injured most of last year. So he would be coming off a very limited fitness base. But he's an exciting player.
Alex Keith is another one that, because we've got this issue with Sauce. He can't freaking move, and we don't really have a ready replacement because Riley O'Brien's carrying his shoulder. Harry Deer's got his knee soreness, so what do we do? Well, I think there's an opportunity to maybe stick JJ in the ruck and chuck Alex Keith at centre-half forward. He's played forward in the past. And he's good kick for goal, and he's quite aggressive at the contest. I don't know. We have to address Sauce because he'll get towed up next week on the G.
Against McAvoy, he'll destroy him.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a few people in the chat saying that a couple of players didn't look so good in the SANFL. Well, I'd put it to people at the moment that the SANFL isn't a very good indicator of form. Because how hard must it be to get a freaking kick in that team at the moment when you've got about 12 top-up players, scattered throughout the team? It reminds me of the old amateur league days, you guys, when you're playing Bs, trying to break into the As, and you have to go and get your own ball because no one will kick it to you because no one can kick.
Well, that's why Ben Davis's season is so good. I'm pretty sure he'd be our leading goal kicker. And the thing about it is that... Vardy Magic in the chat makes the observation he doesn't get a lot of the ball, and that's probably true, but he plays as a medium forward. He doesn't really run through the midfield at all. He plays as a medium forward, but what he does is he takes big contested marks. And, when you're in a side that's getting pumped week in, week out, and you're a 187-centimetre medium-sized forward, and you're the leading goal kicker, you're doing something right.
It's a tough gig.
in your second season, that is a mighty tough gig. And the thing about him is that he takes contested marks, and he takes big contested marks, and that's what's exciting.
Yeah,
and you know what? He'll probably be hungry. He'll probably really want it and really want to show what he's got to do. And maybe we need a bit of that hunger injected in.
Yeah. So Gooch seems the obvious one.
Yep.
Someone down back if Lairdy's not up for it. Otherwise, Lairdy and Brown swap. Thankfully, they don't have Cyril, but as you mentioned, Pete, Burgoyne's 350th. You reckon they might be up for that one?
I think they might. Be up.
Yeah. So we might dial it in. We might dial it in on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, I'll be watching the Socceroos on Saturday night. Yeah, I'll put my cards on the table straight away.
Pete, you got to fly, is that right?
I might have to buzz off, but
A tip?
I'll let you guys finish with the competitions and Game of Crows. I'll tip the Hawks. I can't see any way, shape, or form that we can possibly win, and it would be certainly a miraculous victory if we were able to pull it out of the fire. But I just don't see any way that we can, because we're just simply not playing well enough. We're not playing for each other. We've got no cohesion, and we're down on personnel. All of those things, for all of those reasons, Hawthorn, are a decent side. They've just come off of a good win against Port Adelaide. They were stiff to lose to Sydney at the MCG. They've had some good wins and some good results against good sides. So they're around the mark, Hawthorn, and for a top 8 spot. And I cannot see any way, shape, or form that we beat Hawthorn.
Very good, mate. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Catch you next week. Cheers.
Donkey, what do you reckon about the weekend, mate? Any hope?
Well, my brain's telling me that we're not going to win, but my brain has only told me that 2 other times this season. That was against Richmond and against Sydney. So So I'm against all rational thought and will. I'm going to say the Crows in a by 2 or 3 goals. We're going to show. This is going to be one of our diamond in the roughs games. We're going to get a little bit back. It's important for people out there listening to know that in '98 we were 6-6, just like we are now, only 20 years later. So I'm backing us to turn it all around and come through with the goods at the end of the year.
Mate, I love your enthusiasm, but I don't share it. It would make the earlier win this season against Sydney look like a pedestrian walk in the park if we were to beat Hawthorn this week. And I just can't tip us. I can't tip us, and I think it's going to be a heavy loss, to be honest with you. And going into the bye, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very tumultuous down at West Lakes. And I think that a heavy loss on Saturday evening is going to kick that off.
No, I'm looking at the season as a whole, and I think for me it's been a bit tough over the past sort of 3 weeks watching the footy. Watching us getting the hell crack kicked out of us in Alice Springs live sort of let a fair bit of the air out of the balloon for me, and then all this stuff about collective minds has sort of let it down too. But I've just sort of decided to go back and go, hey, actually, we made a grand final last year. We've still got a lot of good players. We know how to play football. Our confidence is down and something isn't quite clicking. If we can just get it to click back, get a couple of those players back and chalk up a few wins, then who knows where we're going to go. But there's no evidence to support the fact that it's going to happen this week, except for the fact I want it to. So I am all in on a win.
Mate, I love your optimism. Quickly, the other matches this round, Port v Bulldogs at Adelaide Oval on Thursday night. Seems like an easy win to meet for the pair.
Yeah, no, I tipped them last week against the Tigers. I'll have to tip them again this week. And the higher they go up the ladder, the more chance we've get a pick before them. So
absolutely, yeah. Sydney West Coast at the SCG should be a cracker, actually, Friday night.
Yeah, Sydney are a tough one. Obviously the West Coast are in form and playing really good footy. But I think Sydney's best is better than West Coast's best. It's just about whether they rock up and bring it. So, and the toss of the coin, I am going with West Coast.
Yeah, Sydney home form isn't great this year. But as well as West Coast are playing, I have trouble picking them when they travel. And I think Sydney in a very, very tight one on Friday night. The next game is a must-see. I've got my phone on silent. I've told my relatives not to ring me. I've kicked the kids out of the house because it's the block bus.
That won't be tough for your relatives, though, will it?
No, they won't come.
They won't
anyway.
be changing their schedule.
They won't be coming anyway. But we got the blockbuster Saturday afternoon game, Carlton versus Fremantle at Etihad Stadium. What a rip snorter!
Yeah, look, it's going to be really great to watch. What's that guy? Sarah? Yeah. See if he can. He might rack up 40 touches this weekend.
Could do.
So is it Sarah versus Paddy Dow? Was he Paddy Dow play for Carlton? I can't even remember.
Okay, I don't take any notice.
Yeah, no, not really me either. I was just trying to give some interest, but look, this is the 2017 NAB draft rookies match is on display at the MCG, so that should be good to watch.
Oh, look, I got to go Carlton, I guess. I don't know. Freo looked like they were trying pretty hard against us. A couple of good kids.
Yeah. Look, I reckon we just played Freo into form, just like we played GWS into form the week before. So let's go with I'm going to go Freo.
And then, if that excitement wasn't enough, Donkey, following that game at 4:35, Saturday twilight prime time, Gold Coast versus St Kilda at Metricon. I reckon there might be more officials at that game than spectators. What do you reckon?
Well, this is a very interesting game for the AFL. If Gold Coast win, they get to keep their colours. and be called St Kilda on the Gold Coast. Whereas if St Kilda win, I think they become the St Kilda Suns, but they have to move to Tasmania. So I'm not sure who wins out of this one.
Yeah, just the All-Stars concept.
Yeah, that's right.
Then, of course, Saturday night. Oh, go on. Give us a tip.
I was going to say Saints for the win.
Yeah, you can't tip Gold Coast at the moment. Hawks, Adelaide Saturday night. We'll cover that one. And then on Sunday, the standalone match, which should be a good one, I think. Geelong in good nick at the moment, playing Richmond. Going okay. Not setting the world on fire, but it is at the MCG. So what do you reckon there?
Look, I reckon Geelong are going to come out breathing fire. I think have got a bit of atonement to do for their embarrassing whatever that final was called at the start of last year. I think Richmond is starting to show some weakness, and they're going to crumble mentally like the weaklings they are. I'm a little bit dirty. We lost the grand final, so that's just going to happen every time.
Yeah, let it go. Geelong look good on their home ground. I still think they're a little bit lacking down back. Dusty back in, I think, for Richmond. The
quotation marks calf problem he had to fly out. Yeah. I was actually surprised that they did it this week, not next week, so he could take a couple of weeks off in a row. But,
I was actually surprised they let him back in the country. But anyway, that's another story. Probably Richmond for mine, but hopefully an entertaining game because it's, apart from the Sydney West Coast game, it's a shithole round of football. Once again, doesn't really inspire me to sit in front of the TV. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the Hawks Adelaide game has the ability to be either really crackingly hot, or they flog us, or both sides have a disposal efficiency of about 23%, and it's going to be horrible. So,
not an inspiring round of footy. I don't like the period of the buys. It seems to throw out some shockers.
Yeah.
Anyway, now, Donkey, you got 18 seconds to prepare yourself for competitions. Take it away, mate.
The Donkeys Dreamboats kick off the round with taking on first place Sweet. Donkeys doing a very good impersonation of the Crows this year. Were hot to trot, should have taken on everyone. Got hit by injuries early, and now there's a lot of fingers being pointed at the coach. Dylan FCC has wiped out Habanero Hot Sauce, which 1752, which is one of the higher scores of the round. Mixed Spuds took care of Big Crows Bangers, so they're doing a very good. You're doing a very good Carlton impersonation at the moment, mate.
We're going to head in for some meditation, I reckon, over the bye.
Yeah, you're gonna go find your spirit animals and find out what your male life journey is. That'll be good.
Reset the mechanism, as Andrew Fagan tweeted last weekend.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what resetting the mechanism means. If you're listening, are you having another kid or what's going on with resetting the mechanism? Yeah, tweet us if you're listening, mate, because we'd like to know what that means.
Well, yeah, we know he's listening because he's all about all things Crows. Speaking of resetting the mechanism, the Winter March, which is Peanut, he scored a great 1668 over Barachos. Corey Alts took out, it was the second highest score of the round with the Coulterbeans with 1776 there. DIY brain surgery took out Skid Kids. Monkey Slappers. Monkey Slappers was the star of the round. I'm sure he's going to struggle in the next bye rounds, but 18-15. So he scored 600 points more than you, Phoenix.
Yeah, good on him.
And it's just a mammoth effort. Took out Pete's Pirates. Newbie Kimber had a very shocking score of 1,300. Azza knocked him off with 1751, so a good score there. And Shuey, the bloke who hasn't touched his team for the week, went down to Sanders on 1621. You only beat Shuey by 9 points there, Fiend, so that is something you need to have a bit of a think about. The top four hasn't really changed in a long while, so we've got Sel Wheat sitting on top with 40 points, Dylan FCC down to 36 in second. The Winter March and One Win Wonders only percentage separates them on 32. And anyone just wondering about where the casters are sitting, I dropped down 3 spots this weekend, which is very sad, down to 12th. And the Big Fiend is on 2 wins, but he is sitting in 17th place. So
disgraceful.
Don't listen to our Bryce.
I think the only difference between you and me,
about
Donkey,
2,000 points.
You taught yourself up, whereas I made no rash statements whatsoever. So I've underpromised and underdelivered, but you've certainly overpromised. You wanted your own bloody 10-minute Supercoach spot. Thank God we didn't run with that. We'd probably get sued.
Just to talk about how badly done by I've been.
Quick.
No. Anyway. We'll go into tipping then. See, this is what I have to put up with people listening. I just pushed it around, knocked it to the ground.
You're just not used to it. Oh, what about you?
That's right.
Yeah.
No sausage rolls for me.
Now, have you got the tipping in front of you?
Yeah, I do. I've been waiting to talk, but you just keep cutting me off.
Let's do it.
Not really. I just went the wrong bit.
All right.
So round 12. You start.
Yeah, Megan got 6. Good on you, Megan. Mark and Peter J got 5. And then a number on 4. Joel, Dominic, Dan, Ben, and Simon, and then the rest of us. I think all the 3s are the people like me. Forgot to put our tips in yet again. Oh, where are we sitting? So J-Mac, the chat stalwart on 73, one ahead of Cellar Dwellers Michael on 72, and also Ben Short on 72. We got Dom on 71. Megan Vey is the dark horse here. If I had my money on a Smoky, my money would be on Megan. She's on 70. And then there's 3 on 69. Matt, Mark, and Dan, the inaugural Crowcaster, and then the rest of it. Now, where are you in this one? Are you on this one? Yeah, you are. You're on 65, Donk, and I'm on 60, which is a disgusting effort. You only got 2
I got 2 last week. Yeah, shocker.
Okay.
Absolute shocker.
And that was competitions. Let's hook into Game of Crows real quickly. Effective disposals, Donkey. There weren't many of them. Count a few of them on one. Oh, my God, some of the stats are horrific. But anyway, effective disposals. If you were on Lockie Neal, you were putting on the wrong team. If you were on Kyle Hartigan...
You're kidding.
Kyle friggin' Hartigan at 90.9%.
Go home 2018, you're drunk.
Yeah. He had 10 effective disposals. So, no, I've done the wrong thing. That's disposal efficiency. Sorry, if you're on Kyle Hartigan, I've just prematurely made you happy. No, effective disposals, 18. Paul Seedsman had 18, and Matt Crouch, surprisingly, had 18 effective disposals. So, anyone on either of those 2 boys get 3 points. Sam Gibson gave you 17 effective disposals. I don't think anyone picked Sam. And a lot of people on Bryce Gibbs. He had 16, so you get a point for Bryce. I still haven't updated the leaderboard. I will do so during the bye break, and everything will be up to date. But rest assured that I am taking note of everyone's vote. So treat it as a mystery leaderboard at the moment, and we will have that ready to go after the bye. Not forgetting, of course, there's a carton of beer on this one, Donkey.
Oh, yeah. We might have to pull up our socks.
Well, it's not just West End. I mean, I don't know what. I think Scorp has set a bit of a precedent with the quality of the beer.
What is it?
Well, I don't know yet. We'll probably give the winner a choice of a couple within a price range, I think. Beer's a bit of a personal taste.
Yeah, maybe won't they Cooper's Red after this season?
Yeah, maybe. Now, Macca's not here, so we don't have sweets and smacks, so I reckon that's us done, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
Another interesting podcast. It's a pity that the team isn't going as well as we'd like them to. But look, we appreciate everyone's ongoing listenership. We had huge numbers last week, over 800, which is the highest we've ever had for a podcast for the Crows. So we do appreciate everyone's ongoing support. Don't forget to tell your friends about CrowCast. We obviously would love to get our average listenership over 1,000. You can tweet us and Facebook us, AFL CrowCast. Check out our website, aflcrowcast.com, where you can listen to the podcasts on demand anytime. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can give us a review and a bit of a star rating. That'd be great. Donkey, thank you very much for sticking it out. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.